A memory flashes of a person drowning in a lake near a pavilion, crying out for help as they sink beneath the surface. Bubbles rise as their cries become muffled, and their body drifts deeper into the blue water. A hand reaches down through the water towards them, and a voice pleads for them to give them their hand. The scene shifts to a bride in opulent red wedding attire, who thinks to herself that she has waited 10 years and 133 days for this very moment. She reflects on spending years studying, working out, and practicing her culinary skills, all in preparation for this day. She thinks about how marrying Qi Nian is her goal in life, a goal that will be achieved today. She clenches her fist with determination as a door creaks open. An attendant announces that it is time to remove her veil, and she thinks about how the Emperor, Qi Nian, is the person she has been thinking about for a decade. The Emperor takes his seat opposite her, and they are instructed to take their seats. Her heart pounds as she thinks about what her mother told her about the wedding night, resolving that she can muddle her way through it. An attendant asks their majesties to share the nuptial wine. She gazes at him, thinking he's even more handsome than when they were children. She takes a sip of wine and immediately coughs, thinking that it burns. The Emperor quietly wonders if she has a low tolerance for alcohol as the attendants congratulate them, announcing the wedding ceremony is complete. The attendants leave, closing the doors behind them. Alone, the Emperor asks what she would like to do, suggesting they try the newly made snowflake wine. She agrees, secretly wondering if he intends to get her tipsy and ravish her. He pours her a cup, explaining that the wine was made from fresh grapes and snowflakes harvested the previous year. She declares it's delicious, but then tells him she's feeling a bit dizzy. She suddenly slumps forward onto the table, unconscious. He watches her for a moment before thinking that he managed to get through the night. He gently lifts her and lays her on the bed, pulling the covers over her. He thinks to himself that the ruler of a country shouldn't be so shameless, but if he hadn't secretly poured his wine elsewhere, he wouldn't be able to conceal his secret any longer. He gets up and walks away from the bed. Later, the Empress, Dingdang, stirs and looks over at the sleeping Emperor, thinking how good-looking he is. She decides that since they are now husband and wife, it would be all right to give him a kiss. As she leans in, his eyes snap open, startling her. He asks when she woke up, and she replies that it was not long ago. She then abruptly asks if they did it last night. When he asks what she means, she explains that she heard newlyweds get marks on their bodies after consummating their marriage, but neither of them have any. He confirms that they did, explaining that he was sweet and gentle, which is why he left no marks. He adds that she's still young, so it wouldn't be good for her to engage in overly heated action, causing her to blush and think about how much he must love her. Internally, he notes how gullible his Empress is. He tells her they need to go see the Empress Dowager, and she eagerly offers to help him with his morning ablutions. He agrees, and she takes his hand, admitting she's a bit scared to meet the Empress Dowager for the first time and needs his help. At the Empress Dowager's residence, she asks an attendant the time and is told it's about 6:30 a.m. She complains that the Emperor is becoming more flippant, arriving later and later to pay his respects. The attendant suggests that it's only proper for him to be a bit late the day after his wedding. Just then, an attendant announces the arrival of the Emperor and the Empress consort. They enter and kneel before the Empress Dowager, greeting her. She tells them to rise and take a seat. Dingdang thinks to herself that she was right to be worried. The Empress Dowager immediately belittles Dingdang, calling her dim-witted and from an unimportant family, reminding her that she's known in the capital as being stupid. She adds that the Emperor is young and easily seduced by pretty faces, but she herself won't fall for Dingdang's seductress's charm. To her surprise, Dingdang thanks her for the praise, thinking proudly that while people have called her cute, this is the first time anyone has called her seductive. The Empress Dowager stares, asking when she praised her. The Emperor smoothly intervenes, stating that his mother's words are an approval of his astute and discerning choice. The Empress Dowager scoffs, declaring that his wife doesn't know how to behave and that she must educate her. She orders Dingdang to read and copy 2 classical texts for women and deliver 10 copies to her by the next day. Dingdang calmly asks which calligraphic script she would prefer, listing several options including her own self-created style. Annoyed, the Empress Dowager states that this alone is not enough and calls for Manhwa. A young woman, Commandery Princess Manhwa, enters and pays her respects to the Empress Dowager and the Emperor. The Empress Dowager has Manhwa stand beside her, while Dingdang realizes the princess neglected to greet her, the Empress. The Empress Dowager declares that she has personally taught Manhwa, who is obedient and knowledgeable. Therefore, since the new Empress is so uneducated, Manhwa will live in her palace to guide her into becoming a suitable consort. Dingdang looks utterly horrified by this development. Later, the Emperor finds Dingdang sighing in the garden. He offers to help her copy the texts, though he's not sure he can replicate her unique script. She tells him that's not why she is unhappy, but she feels better hearing his kind words. She then reveals that she often copied texts at home, including various Buddhist sutras, and brought them all with her to the palace. He realizes she stockpiled them in preparation for becoming Empress. She whispers that she can just turn in some of her old copies, explaining that she had to let the Empress Dowager feel she had won, or she would have never let her go so easily. A servant reports to an unseen figure that the Empress is acting in an undignified manner. The Emperor tells Dingdang not to believe rumors, as this Empress has her own smarts. He then notices a red mole on her earlobe, touching it gently and saying it looks good. She is flustered by the contact, feeling her earlobe tingle. He then sternly reminds her that as the Empress, she must be more dignified and not do things like touch his earlobe. She agrees, looking downcast. He asks if he upset her, and she admits she's a little upset about Manhwa. She explains that yesterday it was just the two of them, but now it will be three, and she didn't get a chance to get closer to him. Just then, Princess Manhwa hurries over and apologizes profusely for her impertinence in not greeting the Empress earlier. Dingdang tells her to rise and forget about it, but the princess insists that rituals are important. Dingdang observes Manhwa, thinking that although they look the same age, the princess feels much more mature. Recalling the rumors that Manhwa was meant to be Empress, Dingdang leans in and whispers, asking the princess if she likes his majesty. Manhwa is taken aback and tells Dingdang to exercise discretion, as an Empress must not be so frivolous. Dingdang apologizes, but then leans in again and repeats her question. Elsewhere, the Emperor reflects on his mother's crafty move, noting that a more obstinate Empress would have already freaked out. His subordinate, Tan Taelan, joins him, commenting on the Empress Dowager's craftiness, and noting that the Empress is much more than the rumors claim. The Emperor thinks about Dingdang's difficult position, caught between a fierce mother-in-law and a beautiful rival, concluding she is far cleverer than people give her credit for. Back in her chambers, Dingdang's servant, Ruantao Yu, brings her some desserts she made, since the Empress hadn't eaten. After taking a bite, Dingdang tells her to send some to Manhwa, but Ruantao informs her the princess just left. Ruantao then explains that Manhwa's presence is a clear sign of the Empress Dowager's dissatisfaction with Dingdang's selection as Empress, and warns her to be on guard. Dingdang says she understands, then declares that the most important thing is to get His Majesty to like her as she pulls out a book titled, How to Capture the Hearts of Young Men. Meanwhile, Tan Taelan tells the Emperor that since he went against the Empress Dowager to marry Lady Yu, he will know no peace. The Emperor instructs Taelan to keep an eye on Princess Manhwa and not let anything escape his notice. Taelan then presents the Emperor with a wedding gift, urging him to open it. The Emperor unrolls the scroll and is horrified to see it as an erotic illustration. He shouts Tan Taelan's name, but Taelan just laughs, offers to find him different kinds if he doesn't like that one, and quickly makes his escape. General Tan Taelan walks through a blossoming garden, reflecting on how His Majesty actually followed through with getting married. Her thoughts are interrupted when she spots Princess Manhwa standing beneath a cherry tree and decides to approach. General Tan asks if the little princess is waiting for someone, but Manhwa denies it, insisting she was just passing by. The general smirks, thinking to herself that the rear palace is extremely far from the imperial study, making the princess's excuse unbelievable. She teasingly calls her little princess, prompting a frown from Manhwa, who corrects her by stating she is 6 months older and should be addressed as Jie. The princess continues her lecture, explaining that it is inappropriate to call someone little princess, and asks the general to stop using the title. General Tan observes that while everyone considers Princess Manhwa a stickler for rules, she seems to have quite a temper, which makes things more lively. The general then leans closer, remarking that she is astonished the princess remembers her birthday and age so well, implying the princess has been paying particular attention to her. Flustered, Manhwa stumbles backward as the general whispers teasingly, calling her little princess. Jie. General Tan catches the princess, telling her to be careful. Annoyed, Manhwa pushes her away and chastises her for being a woman who disregards the rules and acts in such an undignified manner. General Tan simply replies that she doesn't know of such rules and that the Princess Jie still doesn't understand her very well, causing Manhwa to shrink back from her intense gaze. With a sly smile, General Tan announces that ministers should not linger in the palace and takes her leave. Watching her go, Princess Manhwa thinks to herself that the woman truly is a scoundrel and that it's no surprise the Empress Dowager finds her out of control. Later that night, the Emperor Qi Nian is in her chambers and dismisses her servants for the evening. She calls out for them again, but is startled when the Empress Dingdang pops out from under the bed covers, announcing that she is here. The emperor is shocked and demands to know what the empress is doing in her bed. The empress, clad in a revealing crimson undergarment, explains that she was told His Majesty would be working late and decided to come spend the night. Flustered, the emperor tries to leave, claiming she just remembered more documents to review. The empress tearfully stops her, asking why she can't just sleep there, and voices her fear that His Majesty was chosen because he was liked, but now feels he is detested. A small illustrated guide reveals the empress's strategy: go on the offensive, then seduce him, with a third move to be revealed later. Faced with the empress's tears, the emperor quickly backtracks, assuring her she isn't detested, just exhausted from work, and agrees to stay the night. The empress's mood brightens instantly, and she offers to give His Majesty a shoulder massage. The guide reveals the third move. Strategically deployed tears are a powerful weapon. As the empress massages the reluctant emperor's shoulders, a scroll falls from the emperor's robes. The empress picks it up curiously, but the emperor panics and tells her not to look at it. It's too late. The empress unrolls the scroll to reveal an erotic painting of two women. Blushing, the empress declares that she now understands what His Majesty is into. She playfully pushes the emperor onto the bed, asking if she should be on top then. The emperor, looking away, agrees that it sounds good, to the empress's surprise. However, the emperor quickly adds that she is tired and suggests they have some wine first to get in the mood. The empress agrees, but internally realizes there is a huge problem. She recalls how every time she has tried to be intimate with the emperor, he suggests drinking wine, and she always wakes up the next morning with no memory of what happened and no physical signs of consummation. She decides to investigate. When the emperor offers her wine, the empress suggests they drink her own wine instead. Soon after, the empress feigns dizziness and collapses. Believing her to be asleep, the emperor sighs in relief, thinking she has muddled through again, but needs a new plan before the empress becomes suspicious. However, the empress opens her eyes, realizing Qi Nian truly does not want to sleep with her, and wonders why the seemingly unhappy emperor avoids her. Remembering that newlyweds are supposed to have marks on their bodies, she checks the sleeping emperor's skin but finds nothing. She then checks her own body and also finds no marks. As she leans over the emperor, her eyes snap open. The emperor then bites the empress on the neck, declaring that she will leave a mark then. The next morning, the empress's maid, Ruintao, sees the mark and is confused, but the empress concludes that the emperor isn't unwilling, but unable to perform. She whispers instructions to her maid, who later reports that His Majesty was very considerate and asked them to take good care of the exhausted empress, making her heart flutter. Later, the empress receives a message from her publisher asking for the next manuscript of her novel. She retrieves it from a locked box, instructing her maid to make a copy for delivery, while she muses that the emperor's supposed condition can't be the real reason he avoided selecting an empress for so long. Meanwhile, the emperor is brought a soup sent by the empress. She finds the taste strange and is told it is meant to invigorate her body. Recognizing the ingredients as remedies for impotence, the emperor is exasperated by what the little empress is thinking. Despite her frustration, she drinks the soup and tells her eunuch to thank the empress for the gift before slumping over her desk in despair. Elsewhere, the empress dowager is informed that the emperor and empress appear to have a harmonious relationship. The empress dowager scoffs, stating she knows her own child's stubborn personality and that this is all an act. Speaking to Princess Manhwa, she reveals her plan. She will use the empress's eventual inability to produce an heir as proof of her immorality, allowing their clan to install Manhwa as the new empress. Manhwa silently wonders how the empress dowager can be so certain the empress will remain childless. Later, the empress is enthusiastically patting the emperor's chest, reassuring her that with proper nutrition, she will surely get better. Cornered, the emperor finally decides on a new strategy and, with a look of feigned difficulty, confesses that she is impotent. She tells the empress that she trusts her with this secret, and the empress promises to keep it safe. Internally, the emperor feels relief, thinking this lie will solve her problems once and for all. To her surprise, the empress hugs her, saying that she likes the emperor and will accept all that she is. The empress admits she is even a little happy to know that she wasn't being intentionally shunned. The emperor is left speechless by this unexpected reaction as the empress continues to receive daily deliveries of invigorating soup. The emperor worries she might die from overconsuming supplements when her maid Quitao bursts in, frantically reporting that the empress dowager intends to punish the empress. At the empress dowager's residence, the empress kneels defiantly, willing to accept punishment but admitting no wrongdoing. The emperor arrives and intervenes, asking her mother to forgive the empress, who is young and new to the palace. The Empress Dowager questions her son's devotion, and the Emperor helps the Empress to her feet, declaring that they are husband and wife and must be punished together. After a tense standoff, the Emperor leads the Empress away, leaving her mother fuming. Back in their quarters, the Emperor asks what happened. The Empress explains that she could not stand by while the Empress Dowager slandered His Majesty, calling him an inferior ruler. She tells him that in her heart he is the best emperor, and she won't allow anyone to say otherwise. The Emperor is touched, asking if she did all this for her. The Empress looks at her lovingly and confesses that it has always been because of her, because she likes her. The Empress recalls telling Qi Nian she never wanted to be an empress, but rather his wife, and that she would have followed him whether he was a prince or a farmer. She remembers whispering to him that he was the only love of her life. Back in the present, Qi Nian, dressed as the Emperor, touches his chin thoughtfully, wondering what would happen if he were a woman, before a maid pulls on his sleeve in alarm. The maid exclaims that his nose is bleeding, and soon the Empress rushes to his side. She tells the maids not to yell, worried the Empress Dowager will find out, but she knows she can't let him keep bleeding. The Empress explains that her mother taught her to apply cold water to the back of the neck for a nosebleed, a traditional remedy for excessive heat. Qi Nian calmly states that he isn't afraid and that it's just some internal heat from nutritional supplements that a cooling soup will fix. The Empress wonders with concern if the supplements are the cause. Once the bleeding stops, Qi Nian announces he is going to the side chambers to change and tells her not to follow. After he leaves, the Empress quietly summons her maid, Ruantao, and furtively asks her to find books from the outside about how one can use one's fingers. Ruantao is shocked, but the Empress shushes her, explaining that His Majesty is unwell and the prescribed soup might have adverse effects. She has a solution in mind for them to be intimate, but worries that if it fails, his self-esteem will be hurt. A short vignette shows the Empress, called Dingdang, blushing as she reads an illustrated book, shocked to learn what is possible and saying she's learned something new. Several days later, palace servants gossip about how the Emperor cherishes the Empress, even getting a nosebleed from being so hot and bothered during a meeting. A stern woman in purple robes, Princess Manhwa, appears and angrily demands to know who is spreading such rumors. The servants beg for forgiveness as the princess orders her supervisor, Moyan, to report them for punishment. Just then, a female general, Tantai Lan, arrives, remarking on the lively scene. She calmly intervenes, suggesting that completely restricting the servants' speech would be too cruel, and tells them to leave, warning them not to do it again. Princess Manhwa is furious and confronts Tantai Lan for overstepping her authority and interfering in the matters of the rear palace. Tantai Lan dismisses the princess's attendants and pulls her away, dragging a protesting Manhwa behind a tree. She advises the princess that those in power must know when to be lenient, warning that pushing the lowly servants to despair could cause them to retaliate since they have nothing to lose. The princess recalls the Empress Dowager describing Tantai Lan as an uncouth girl who never cared for rules. She remembers seeing a young Tantai Lan freely climbing trees for fruit and muses that she could never live with such unrestrained elation, concluding it's sometimes better to turn a blind eye. Back in the present, Tantai Lan playfully pokes the princess's cheek, apologizing for the rash act and inviting her to poke back. The princess coldly declines, calling it pointless. When asked why she is at the palace, Tantai Lan explains she heard His Majesty was unwell. Learning that the emperor is at the Empress's palace, Tantai Lan invites the princess to accompany her, and she agrees. Later, Qi Nian and Tantai Lan are sitting together when Tantai Lan observes that he looks to be in good spirits. Qi Nian admits it wasn't an illness, but an overconsumption of supplements before quickly changing the subject. The Empress suddenly arrives, asking if they were satisfied with the photo scrolls she gave them, revealing she has many more. The Empress realizes the explicit scroll that fell from Qi Nian's robes must have come from Tantai Lan, causing an embarrassed Qi Nian to order his guard to throw the general out. Tantai Lan pleads for mercy before taking her leave to run drills at the barracks. As she departs, she thanks Princess Manhwa for showing her the way and apologizes for offending her earlier, which the princess dismisses. The Empress then stops General Tantai, asking if she is close with the Emperor. When Tantai Lan confirms it, the Empress asks for more of the pictures she gave to His Majesty. The Empress agrees to keep it a secret, and Tantai Lan promises to deliver them tomorrow but asks for a favor in return. She asks the Empress to find out if Princess Manhwa is always so solemn, even in private. Later, the Empress lies in bed, puzzled as to why Tantai Lan only sent her paintings of women together, wondering if the general also knows Qi Nian's secret. She decides to focus on studying the materials. Meanwhile, Tantai Lan reads a detailed report from the Empress about Princess Manhwa's rigorous daily schedule, impressed that she took her joke request so seriously and thinking it was worth finding the scrolls for her. That night, the Empress prepares herself, feeling ready. When Qi Nian arrives, she shoos her maids away. Qi Nian enters, wondering what she is up to. The Empress takes his hand, saying she has some pillow talk for him. She explains her recent reading has taught her that hands also work well for having fun, and she offers to help him. A flustered Qi Nian wonders if Tantai Lan told her something. The Empress reassures him, showing her neatly trimmed nails and soft hands, promising it won't be uncomfortable. Panicked, Qi Nian thinks he can't let her touch him or his secret will be revealed. Seeing how much she wants this, he relents, deciding he must make his wife happy. He tells her that since she wants it, he will give it to her. Lying in bed, Qi Nian holds the Empress's hand, moving it over her body. She protests that it feels weird, but he asks her to describe the feeling. Overwhelmed, she tells him to stop, declaring she's done, but he reminds her he's only just started and she's been thinking about this for days. After a moment, she grabs him, telling him not to stop. Her coronet falls as she declares he can't trick her and that she is going to kiss him now. After she does, Qi Nian holds her chin, remarking that despite all her reading, she's still clumsy. He tells her that knowledge from paper is shallow and that he will teach her himself through practice before kissing her deeply. The next morning, Qi Nian instructs a maid to prepare the Empress's favorite foods as she is exhausted. The Empress, awake and smiling, calls for a writing brush and a box. She takes out a piece of paper, crosses out her previous notes, and writes firmly, "The Emperor can, he really can." An attendant informs His Majesty, Qi Nian, that General Tantai has delivered 50 copies of the palace regulations she made. The attendant relays the general's warning that if she gives the Empress such rubbish again, she will be barred from the palace. Qi Nian instructs the attendant to tell her okay, then asks what the Empress has been up to lately. He is told that the Empress has stopped sending things to his residence, has been taking embroidery lessons, and has gone to the imperial menagerie. Later, Dingdang approaches Qi Nian, holding a small white kitten she calls Mimi, and asks if he likes it. She explains that she found Mimi at the imperial menagerie earlier and thought it was cute. Qi Nian recoils in alarm, telling her to keep it away from him. Later, Dingdang asks Mingwei why His Majesty dislikes cats and dogs, but Mingwei simply states that he just doesn't. Dingdang presses the issue, mentioning that Mingwei was dispatched specifically to stop her after court just for this. She reveals she asked around and heard that Qi Nian was scratched by a feral cat as the crown prince, leading to his aversion to small animals, but she observes that what she saw seemed less like fear and more like panic. She complains that Mingwei's mouth is as closed as a clam and that Sanbao won't listen to her either, pleading with her ally to tell her the truth. The truth is that Qi Nian doesn't dislike them, but rather doesn't dare to like them. A flashback shows a young Qi Nian walking through a snowy courtyard when he hears a meow and discovers a small white kitten shivering in a bush. Delighted, he picks it up, finding it incredibly cute. He shows it to his attendant, Sanbao, and they decide to bring it back to the palace to save it from freezing. Just then, his mother, the noble consort, appears. She furiously slaps Qi Nian, reminding her that she is her son and the future son of heaven, and must shove aside her soft-hearted and girlish attitude. She orders the kitten to be dealt with and decrees that due to the crown prince being scratched, no small animals will ever be allowed in the rear palace again. Sanbao is beaten for his neglectful duties, and the kitten is shown lying lifeless in a pool of blood. Back in the present, General Tantai arrives to see Qi Nian. She presents a highly effective medication from the army, explaining that the Empress Dowager flew into a rage after learning the Empress brought a cat into the bedchamber and sentenced her to kneel for 4 hours. She asks if Qi Nian knew about this, and he is furious. His attendant explains that the Empress Dowager forbade him from reporting it. Tantai reminds Qi Nian that he chose Dingdang specifically to oppose the Empress Dowager and asks how he couldn't have anticipated that she would be targeted. Qi Nian angrily tells her to either shut up and come with him or shut up and leave. He storms out into the rain, ignoring pleas to take care of his health. In her palace, the Empress Dowager calmly sips tea while Dingdang kneels in the rain outside. The Dowager dismisses her attendant's concerns, stating she is merely maintaining order, and orders them to tell the Emperor she is asleep if he arrives. Outside, Qi Nian looks at the kneeling figure of Dingdang in the rain, questioning if he did something wrong. He tells Tantai that he shouldn't have dragged Dingdang into the mess of the rear palace, and that the Empress Dowager is only targeting her because of him, wondering if he should switch her for another person, like Tantai herself. Tantai is shocked by the suggestion. Back in her chambers, Dingdang's attendants help her as she tries to downplay her ordeal. Her attendant, Ruantao, points out that the whole incident was suspicious, as an unfamiliar eunuch conveniently urged them to go to the menagerie where the cat was placed in an obvious spot. Dingdang realizes someone is trying to drive a wedge between her and Qi Nian and resolves not to fall for it. Just then, an attendant announces that General Tantai and Princess Manhwa have sent medication. Dingdang applies the general's medicine and finds a note inside the bottle stating that His Majesty wishes to take another consort to look after the Empress Dowager in her stead. Annoyed, she immediately orders a palanquin to go to the imperial residence. At Qi Nian's residence, Sanbao tries to block her, but Qi Nian orders him to let the Empress in. He looks up as she barges in, commenting that his mother's punishment wasn't enough, before Dingdang rushes forward and embraces him, shouting that he can't like another person. She insists that he should like her first. She then reveals that she knows why he doesn't like cats and dogs, shocking Qi Nian. She asks if he was treating her so coldly because he was afraid she would end up like the cat he found when he was young. Qi Nian tries to dismiss her words, but she asks if he dislikes cats and dogs, or if he dislikes her, to which he replies it's both. She sneezes but insists she's in good health, telling him he's no longer a child and needs to believe in his ability to protect what he loves, adding that she is more afraid of him disliking her than anything the Empress Dowager might do. She picks up the kitten, Mimi, and tells His Majesty that he needs to protect the kitten and protect her, to protect them both. The next day, Dingdang is sneezing repeatedly, and Qi Nian realizes she's burning up with a fever. He immediately summons the imperial physician. The physician reports that the Empress has a cold and that her scraped knees must be properly cared for to prevent future illness. Qi Nian looks at the sleeping Empress, filled with guilt, and sits by her bed, gently telling her not to be afraid because he will protect her. He reflects that she isn't clever, but her words held truth, and he is no longer a child. The next day, Qi Nian visits his mother, the Empress Dowager, and dismisses her servants. He tells her to stop before she goes too far, declaring the Empress is innocent, and that matters of the rear palace will now be handed over to her. The Empress Dowager becomes furious and menacingly asks what would happen if the Empress were to find out that he is a woman, questioning if she would detest him. Qi Nian confidently replies that while others might, she wouldn't. He tells his mother he is no longer a child under her control and walks out. Later, Qi Nian finds Dingdang in her bed and offers to feed her the bitter medicine himself. Afterwards, she asks if he will be coming again that night, and he confirms he will. She then asks why he likes her, clarifying that she means why she likes him, and reminds him that he was the one who rescued her from an icy cold lake years ago. She explains that her youthful crush has since grown into a deep affection that increases daily. Flustered, Qi Nian is pushed back onto the bed by Dingdang, who leans over him. She says she can sense he doesn't dislike her and asks if he can try to like her properly. As she speaks, her hand rests on his chest, which he had only loosely bound that morning. His chest bindings have come loose. Dingdang looks at him with wide, innocent eyes and asks why His Majesty is as soft as her right there. The shock of her question makes Qi Nian faint. Seeing him unconscious, Dingdang decides she must perform CPR and begins to smooch him. His Majesty, Qi Nian, clutches her chest and tells the Empress that she was injured there, explaining that she suffered from skin ulcers as a child, which left the area swollen. She quickly tells the concerned Empress to let go, claiming it hurts. The Empress, wide-eyed, immediately offers to call the imperial physician or even take a look herself to blow on the wound, but a flustered Qi Nian refuses, insisting there's no need. Instead, Qi Nian changes the subject, telling the Empress to focus on recovering from her own cold, after which all matters of the rear palace will be handed over to her. She assures the Empress that as she is the Empress, these duties fall under her purview and promises to back her up if the Empress Dowager causes any more trouble. Touched by this, the Empress leans in and promises not to let Her Majesty down. Qi Nian, blushing furiously, can only think to herself how utterly shameless the Empress is. Later, while reviewing palace expenses, the Empress asks her attendant, Manhwa, about Qi Nian's supposed childhood skin ulcers, explaining that the imperial physician needs more details to prescribe the correct scar medication. Manhwa looks puzzled, stating that His Majesty has always been healthy and rarely suffered from any illness, let alone skin ulcers. The Empress is stunned, realizing Qi Nian lied to her again and wonders why she would lie about something on her chest. Thinking back, she realizes the texture she felt didn't seem like an old scar at all. Manhwa tries to advise the Empress not to rush into taking over palace duties, suggesting the Empress Dowager can still manage, but the Empress, lost in her own thoughts, doesn't hear a word. She cheerfully thanks Manhwa for her work and promises to send over desserts before leaving, telling her they are all family. Left alone, Manhwa contemplates this, just as another servant reminds her of her duty to the Empress Dowager's plan, warning her not to be led astray by others. That night, Qi Nian reflects on how well the Empress has been managing palace affairs, using a combination of kindness and severity that has forced her to admit she underestimated her. As Qi Nian enters her chambers, the Empress greets her, and an attendant announces it's time for the Empress to return to her own palace now that she's recovered. The Empress, however, is still fixated on the lie about the skin ulcers, her curiosity piqued by what Qi Nian could be hiding on her chest. As Qi Nian begins to speak about palace rules, the Empress deliberately spills tea on her, exclaiming clumsily. She apologizes profusely and offers to help Her Majesty change, adding that since she already got scar medication, she can help apply it and make the scars disappear. Qi Nian tells her to wait, a vision of the Empress Dowager flashing in her mind as she contemplates the risk of the Empress discovering she is a woman. She drops her defensive posture, staring intently at the Empress, who thinks it strange that His Majesty is no longer trying to hide anything. The Empress, seeing she's been found out, bows her head and apologizes for being nosy and trying to investigate her. Qi Nian is struck speechless by her sincerity as the Empress asks why she isn't being punished. Qi Nian simply pats her head, telling her it's all right and to get some rest. As Qi Nian walks away, the Empress touches her head, wondering why she feels that Qi Nian was a bit disappointed. Later, in bed, Qi Nian watches the sleeping Empress, thinking that her persistence had almost caused her to reveal everything, and that she should have put up more of a fight. The Empress sleepily murmurs Qi Nian's name before suddenly lunging forward and planting a kiss on her cheek, then nuzzles against her and falls back asleep. The next morning, Qi Nian instructs her servants to let her mistress sleep longer and warns them to report anyone who disrespects her. Sometime later, Qi Nian plays Go with General Tantai Lan, who complains about her hand being sore from copying palace regulations. The general correctly guesses that the Empress is on Qi Nian's mind, prompting Qi Nian to ask what would happen if the Empress found out she was a girl. When the general asks if she wants the Empress to find out, Qi Nian admits she is afraid. The general reassures her that the Empress likes her for who she is, not for her status or gender. The conversation shifts to Princess Manhwa, and the general warns Qi Nian not to have any weird intentions towards her, though she claims her interest is merely curiosity about how a canary raised in a cage would fare if set free. Before the general leaves, Qi Nian stops her to ask what kind of things girls usually like. Following the general's advice, Qi Nian presents the Empress with beautiful things, delicious food, and a cute kitten, leaving the Empress to wonder what he is up to. When she asks if he is unwell, Qi Nian declares that she is trying to like her properly, as the Empress wanted. This unexpected sincerity brings the Empress to tears. A panicked Qi Nian thinks Tantai Lan must have lied to her again, but the Empress clarifies that she was crying because she still had a ton of unused tricks up her sleeve to win her over. Qi Nian bursts out laughing, telling her she can still use them. Seeing her so happy for the first time, the Empress takes her hand and wishes for her to always be this happy. Qi Nian replies that while she hoped the Empress would like her, she hopes even more for her to be happy. Meanwhile, Princess Manhwa is being advised by her servant to limit her interactions with General Tantai, as the Empress Dowager dislikes her. While embroidering, Manhwa pricks her finger and dismisses her servant, wanting to be alone. She walks by a pond, conflicted between her debt to the Empress Dowager and her fondness for the Empress. She is startled by General Tantai Lan, who appears behind her. The general notices she is upset, and after the princess denies it, she demonstrates how to skip a stone to relieve frustration. Manhwa's first attempt fails spectacularly, sinking immediately. The general then teaches her personally, standing behind her to guide her hand. The princess succeeds in making 3 skips and beams with genuine happiness. The general asks if she feels better, and the princess shyly thanks her. The general tells her to call her Elan instead of general, and Manhwa hesitantly does so. As the general leaves, she thinks to herself that coaxing a canary from its cage is a process that must be taken one step at a time. The princess calls out to her, asking if she can find her for a chat if she feels down in the future, to which the general warmly agrees. In the Empress's chambers, she daydreams about giving Qi Nian the dressing gown she is embroidering, imagining a romantic exchange. Her fantasies are interrupted by a servant who points out she is drooling. Elsewhere, the Empress Dowager discusses Princess Manhwa's recent behavior with an attendant, noting her fascination with the Empress and General Tantai Lan's recklessness. The Empress Dowager reveals that she knows the Empress is embroidering a gown for the Emperor and instructs her attendant to have Manhwa make one as well, planning to create a conflict to make the princess reliant only on her. 3 days later, the Empress visits Manhwa, showering her with bolts of fine fabric sent by His Majesty and insisting they share them. Just as the Empress is about to ask Manhwa a question, an attendant named Moyan enters, announcing that the dressing gown the princess made for His Majesty is ready. The Empress confronts Manhwa, who denies making any gown. The Empress pretends to believe her, but Moyan, determined not to lose the opportunity, insists the princess made one without knowing the Empress was also doing so. Furious, Manhwa scolds her servant for speaking nonsense. The Empress calmly tries to de-escalate, but then suddenly shoves Moyan to the ground, yelling at her for what she is doing. The servant falls, and the others rush to her side as she tearfully pleads that the princess wasn't trying to compete for His Majesty's affections, adding that the Empress can't just assault people out of anger, leaving the Empress looking on with a cold expression. A princess named Manhwa looks distressed as her attendants, Moyan and Moyu, try to calm her down, one of them whispering that the Empress Dowager will definitely seek justice on her behalf. Manhwa inwardly wonders if the Empress Dowager orchestrated this whole affair, using her as a pawn to cause trouble for the Empress. The Empress, Dingdang, arrives and calmly instructs her servant Ruantao to fetch the imperial physician, while telling another servant, Qi to retrieve medication from a box by her bed. Qi realizes with a start that the box actually contains embroidery the princess had given the Empress. As Ruantao moves to leave, Manhwa's attendants try to stop her, pushing the princess aside in the process. Manhwa insists she is all right, claiming she just accidentally slipped and tells everyone not to make a fuss. She asks the Empress to return to her palace, but one of Manhwa's attendants angrily accuses the Empress of taking advantage of the princess's gentle nature. In response, the Empress slaps the attendant across the face, asking what right she has to speak before her and the princess. Just then, the Empress Dowager arrives with her entourage, questioning the Empress's authority and asking if she thought herself the sole arbiter in the rear palace. The scene shifts to the Empress Dowager's palace where everyone is gathered. The Dowager declares that Moyan and Moyu were attacked by the Empress and demands to know what happened. One of the attendants, Moyan, lies and claims that the Empress flew into a rage over a dressing gown the princess was making for the Emperor and pushed her down. The Empress's servant, Ruantao, refutes this, shouting that she clearly saw Moyu push the princess, but Moyu denies it, accusing Ruantao of lying to protect the Empress. The Empress Dowager seizes on the accusation, declaring that the Empress committed a terrible act and will eventually try to take Manhwa's life. The Empress calmly addresses the claim about the dressing gown and has Qi present an item. She shows the robe Moyan retrieved and then a separate piece of embroidery from Manhwa, pointing out the needlework is completely different. When challenged, Moyu changes the story and confesses that the princess ordered her to make the gown. The Empress smiles coldly, questioning how Moyu knew of her secret intention to personally embroider a gown for the Emperor, something she had told no one. She angrily asks how they dared to pry into her affairs and slander her. An attendant announces the Emperor's arrival. The Empress Dowager immediately complains to her son, the Emperor Qi Nian, about the Empress's jealous and undignified behavior. The Emperor ignores her and goes directly to the Empress, gently asking if she is all right. The Empress Dowager scoffs that Manhwa is the one who was hurt, pointing out a scratch on her face being tended to. The Emperor orders for Manhwa to be brought to the hall, but the Empress Dowager protests, saying she was disfigured. The Emperor firmly states that the Empress is innocent and he will support her. He then confronts his mother, questioning her rush to judgment based only on the servant's biased words. When she becomes angry at his impertinence, he reminds her that he warned her not to be surprised by his harsh methods if she wouldn't listen to reason. He orders Manhwa to be fetched immediately, while the Empress muses that this clumsy framing attempt wasn't a threat to her position. The princess arrives and tearfully apologizes to the Emperor, lamenting that she was almost disfigured and had to be interrogated. She embraces him, crying that her aunt is old and can no longer protect her. The Emperor asks what happened, and Manhwa states it had nothing to do with the Empress. She explains that she was clumsy and bumped into a censor, and her maids were only trying to protect her, begging for their lives. The Empress Dowager understands this as a message from Manhwa that she is just a pawn who can be easily discarded. After Manhwa insists she suffered no injustice, the Emperor halts the investigation. However, he declares Moyan and Moyu slander a crime punishable by death. He commutes the sentence to 80 lashes and expulsion from the palace. The maids are dragged away screaming for the Empress Dowager to save them. One tearfully asks the princess if she really did it for her. The Emperor justifies his decision, saying letting them go would only encourage future insubordination, and orders the sentence carried out. Later, the Empress Dowager apologizes to the Empress, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, to which the Empress coolly replies she wouldn't dare be angry. The scene changes to the hot springs where the Empress is bathing. Her maids express relief that she was protected by the Emperor. The Empress muses that she wasn't the focus of the day's events, then whispers a plan to her maid as the Emperor arrives. The maid tells the Emperor her lady fainted in the springs. The Emperor sees through the lie and warns her that treason is punishable by death. The Empress then emerges from the water, pulling him in with her with a splash. She tells him she was very sad today. Later, sitting by the spring, the Emperor says she was wronged, but she replies that she feels sorry for Manhwa, who was used as bait by the Empress Dowager, a woman she trusted like a mother. The Emperor silently reflects on his own deception, having to pretend to be male. The Empress playfully chides him about his wet clothes, then admits she's a little angry that her surprise for him, the dressing gown, is now ruined. He teases her, and she pulls open his robe to help him try on the gown, only to stop in surprise, asking what he's wearing underneath. He evades with a kiss, whispering if they should try this in the water. She pushes back gently, saying she knows he's hiding something but is willing to wait and trust him. The Emperor is struck by her trust, knowing he is deceiving her about his very identity. She says it's fine if he doesn't tell her and asks if they can continue as they did last time. With his hand, he agrees, a voice in his head telling him not to push her away, and they embrace. Meanwhile, the Empress Dowager plays Go, musing that the Emperor's fondness for the new Empress is temporary and that he will eventually tire of her coldness toward his cousin, Manhwa. Elsewhere, the Empress meets with General Tantai Lan in a garden. The general, dressed elegantly for once, blushes when the Empress compliments her, insisting she is a girl too. The general explains she came because of rumors about the Empress and the princess not getting along. The Empress suggests the Empress Dowager deserves some small comfort after her plan failed, and the general cleverly interprets this as a signal to cast a line far and reel in a mighty catch. The Empress calls her a genius. The general then wonders if her current attire is appropriate for paying respects to the Empress Dowager, revealing her plan. The Empress tells the general to pass a message to Manhwa, assuring her she doesn't blame her, but warns that the Empress Dowager won't let things rest. At the Empress Dowager's palace, the general is given a cold reception and told to leave. The general then asks to pay her respects to the princess. The Empress Dowager, suspecting the Empress arranged this, allows it, smirking as she anticipates the rough brute general will make a mistake. In a bamboo grove, Manhwa is copying a sutra when she is startled by a noise. She turns to see General Tantai Lan approaching. General Tantai Lan, dressed in elegant red and gold robes, stands in a bamboo grove where she is met by Princess Manhwa, who asks why Alan is there. Alan compliments Manhwa, noting how rare it is to see her in feminine clothes and telling her she looks lovely. She explains that while her official purpose is to visit the Empress Dowager, she is actually there to deliver a message from the Empress. Manhwa is visibly pleased by the compliment. She hesitantly asks if Her Majesty is still willing to speak with her. Alan gently removes a leaf from Manhwa's hair, reassuring her that the Empress does not blame her and still considers her family. Manhwa looks down sadly, mentioning that misfortune seems to follow anyone associated with her, but she is content just knowing the Empress still sees her as family, wanting nothing more. Alan adds that the Empress has always been kind to her as well, and she is very fond of her. Alan then playfully flicks Manhwa's forehead, chiding the lovely girl for frowning like an old nun. Leaning in conspiratorially, Alan whispers an offer to leave the palace, suggesting the unchanging scenery must feel like a cage after so many years and asking if she doesn't want to see the outside world. Manhwa expresses her doubt, certain the Empress Dowager would never allow it, but Alan confidently promises she will find a way, no matter the difficulty. Soon after, they are in a bustling city street, Alan leading a visibly nervous Manhwa through the lively crowd. Alan takes her hand, telling her not to be afraid and to stay close. She then remarks on Manhwa's drab blue robes, deciding she will have her mother make new clothes for the servants. Manhwa looks down at her attire, wondering if it truly looks so bad. Alan quickly clarifies that the clothes don't look bad, but that beauties like them deserve better. With a cheerful declaration, she announces they are going to buy new clothes, and Manhwa happily agrees. Manhwa is then shown transformed in a beautiful new lavender and blue gown, holding a fan and looking absolutely radiant. Alan praises her new look, calling her the beautiful Manhwa and grandly offering to give her a proper tour of the capital. The two walk off arm in arm, sharing a laugh. They stop at a cosmetics shop where Alan shows Manhwa a popular lip makeup. She instructs Manhwa to hold still as she gently applies the rouge to her lips with her fingertip. Stepping back, she admires her handiwork, declaring it looks as good as she expected. Alan tells the shopkeeper to pack up the cosmetics, and he thanks Miss Tantai for her purchase. Ming-Wai looks down, her heart fluttering from the close attention. Alan then takes her hand, noting she must be hungry after all the shopping, and promises to treat her to food she could never find in the palace, an offer Ming-Wai eagerly accepts. Back at the Empress's inner palace, the Empress receives the news with a shocked exclamation, unable to believe Tantai Lan actually took Ming-Wai out of the palace. Her attendant confirms it, reminding her that Her Majesty had given permission for her to do as she pleased. The Empress rubs her temples in exasperation, complaining that allowing Tantai Lan to act freely has made her completely unrestrained. She privately muses that it all seemed too easy. She instructs her attendant, Yuanying, to take her official tally and ensure Ming-Wai is seen off before the palace gates close for the night, cautioning her to make sure the Empress Dowager remains unaware. The Empress then thinks about how His Majesty planned to go fishing for Mimi the cat. The scene finds the Emperor at the Lotus Pond, fishing pole in hand, with the Empress giggling beside her. The Emperor notes the Empress's unusually good behavior and asks what's wrong. The Empress leans in to whisper that she might have caused some trouble. After hearing the story, the Emperor simply responds with an "oh," showing no sign of concern. The Empress is taken aback by the calm reaction and asks if the Emperor isn't angry at all. The Emperor explains that Alan had already written a letter requesting permission, and though this wasn't how she expected it to happen, she's glad Ming-Wai agreed to go. In a fit of pique, the Empress stomps her foot and yells Tantai Lan's name, calling her annoying. The Emperor calmly suggests that if the Empress feels she caused trouble, she can make a trip to the kitchens to have the caught fish made into soup, some unsalted for Mimi and the rest for her, but pointedly none for the Empress, who cries out in protest. Meanwhile, Alan and Ming-Wai arrive at a food stall where the owner greets Miss Tantai. Alan orders a double portion of her usual dish, telling Ming-Wai not to underestimate the stall as its cooking is delicious. They are served 2 bowls of peach noodles, which Alan describes as wontons and noodles with toppings, the pink meat visible through the thin wrappers like floating peach blossoms. Ming-Wai takes a bite and her eyes widen in delight, exclaiming that it's incredibly delicious. Alan smiles, pleased, and says it's wonderful to see Ming-Wai so happy. A shy Ming-Wai looks down, but Alan says she has something to ask her. Alan reveals that she often sees Ming-Wai in the palace, hiding and sneaking glances at her. A flustered Ming-Wai asks how she knew. Alan boasts about her martial arts training, saying she wouldn't be a general if she couldn't detect a stalker. Ming-Wai quickly denies that she was stalking her. Alan playfully presses her, asking what she was doing then, comparing her actions to those of a pining maiden in a novella. Ming-Wai stammers, at a loss for words. Deciding to end the teasing, Alan tells her to finish eating so they can visit the southern market, saying she'll go pay the bill. However, upon reaching for her money, Alan's face falls in shock as she realizes her coin purse is missing. Ming-Wai asks how it could be lost when she just had it, as Alan panics about the humiliation of being unable to pay. Ming-Wai suggests using her jewelry as collateral, but remembers she brought no silver from the palace. Alan dismisses the idea, stating that palace jewelry in public circulation would cause a serious incident. As Ming-Wai suggests other options, Alan grins mischievously and proposes a different plan. They will run on the count of 3. She counts to 2, then yells "run," pulling a bewildered Ming-Wai along and urging her to hurry before they get caught. As they flee, Ming-Wai reflects on Alan's carefree existence, so different from her own life of strict rules. She realizes she envied Alan's freedom, and for a brief moment today, she felt she had become that envied person. Back at the stall, the owners remark on General Tantai causing trouble again, this time with a lady. Once they're safe, Alan and Ming-Wai catch their breath. Alan asks what Ming-Wai thought of her solution. Still worried, Ming-Wai asks if they shouldn't find a way to pay for their meal. She suggests going to Alan's nearby home for silver and takes her hand. Alan pulls her hand back and bursts into laughter, confessing that she had already paid and was only teasing. Ming-Wai's eyes fill with tears, and a concerned Alan worries she took the joke too far. She apologizes profusely, insisting she didn't mean to deceive her. But then, Ming-Wai breaks into loud laughter, declaring that Tantai Lan truly lives up to her reputation as a scoundrel who fears nothing. A blushing Alan proudly agrees she's the best at being a scoundrel. Ming-Wai takes her hand again, asking Alan to show her around more, wanting to have a truly fun and carefree time. Later that night, the Empress paces anxiously in the palace, wondering why Ming-Wai hasn't returned yet. The Emperor calmly strokes her cat, Mimi, and tells her not to worry, describing Alan as a principled person who knows her limits. The Empress asks how the Emperor came to trust her so much. The Empress recalls that while she was in the palace, Alan was of the Tantai family and wonders how they met. The emperor explains that after being named crown prince, her father sought study partners for her. General Tantai's family returned to the capital, and his daughter, being of a similar age, was asked to stay. She reveals the truth. The Tantai family guarded the frontiers, and her father kept Alan in the capital as a political hostage to prevent the general from gaining too much power. The emperor is struck by the realization that she was the one who kept her there. The empress calls out, asking what she's thinking. The emperor brushes it off as reminiscing about her youth. The empress muses about them being innocent childhood friends, her tone tinged with jealousy, which is visually represented by a pot of vinegar. The emperor smirks, teasingly asking about a sour smell and wondering if the palace's vinegar vats have been overturned. The empress pouts and denies being jealous. The emperor gently holds her chin, reminding her that while Alan is a childhood friend, the empress is the one by her side now. The empress admits she couldn't help it, and the emperor leans in for a kiss. Their moment is interrupted by an attendant announcing that the general and the princess have returned. The attendant, Ruantao, reports that as they entered the palace, the Empress Dowager's attendants immediately took them away. The Empress finds the timing too coincidental, realizing the Empress Dowager must have known and orchestrated the situation to catch them. She declares she must go and see, but the Emperor holds her back, asking what the rush is. The Emperor gives her a sly look, assuring her that there won't be a scene tonight. The Empress notes her fox-like smile, thinking it looks great. In the Empress Dowager's chambers, Tantai Lan and Ming Wai face the matriarch, who questions the general's gall in taking a princess from the palace. She declares it a capital offense. Ming Wai falls to her knees, pleading for the punishment to fall on her, claiming she begged to be taken out. The Empress Dowager scolds her for becoming reckless under the Empress's influence and vows to punish them both, Ming Wai even more severely. Ming Wai bravely counters, arguing that since the Emperor placed the Empress in charge of the rear palace, she should be the judge. The Empress Dowager is stunned by this defiance. She scoffs at the mention of the Empress, insisting the Empress only treats Ming Wai well because she is her niece and the Emperor's cousin, not out of any genuine affection. Tantai Lan quietly urges Ming Wai not to believe her. The Empress Dowager demands Tantai Lan admit her crime. Before passing judgment, Tantai Lan asks her to look at a document. She explains it is a decree she requested from His Majesty yesterday, officially approving her to take the princess out. The Empress Dowager reads it, her face tightening with displeasure. Tantai Lan whispers to Ming Wai that she told her to trust her. The Empress Dowager remarks on how close the general and the emperor are, to which Tantai Lan smoothly replies that a ruler and minister should be of one mind. Tantai Lan then adds that she also received a reward from the empress, permission to spend the night at the princess's residence, and asks if the Empress Dowager has any objections. Internally fuming at the empress's involvement, the Empress Dowager dismisses them. Tantai Lan and Ming Wai leave hand in hand under the moonlight, leaving the Empress Dowager to her fury, which she unleashes by sweeping everything off her desk. At Ming Wai's residence, Ming Wai apologizes for not having anything prepared for her stay. Tantai Lan reassures her that after years in military barracks, anything is fine. She compliments Ming Wai's elegant and fragrant quarters, causing her to blush. Announcing she is sweaty from their day out, Tantai Lan says she wants to take a bath. Ming Wai offers to have one drawn for her, but Tantai Lan cheekily asks if they should bathe together. When a flustered Ming Wai protests, Tantai Lan laughs it off as a joke and says she will go first. Left alone, Ming Wai blushes deeply and mutters "little bastard" under her breath. From behind the bathing screen, Tantai Lan calls out that she heard that, startling Ming Wai, who then breaks into a small, amused smile. Ming Wai lies in bed next to Tantai Lan, her face flushed as she thinks about how unusually intimate it is for them to be sharing a bed. She nervously suggests that she could sleep in one of the side halls, but Tantai Lan calls her name, startling her before leaning in close to ask what she is so worried about, reminding her that they are both girls. Tantai Lan playfully questions if Ming Wai is afraid of being gobbled up during the night. Peeking from under the covers, Ming Wai finds herself mesmerized, thinking that she used to see Lan as merely dashing and cool, but seeing her up close, she realizes she is truly beautiful. Sensing Ming Wai's hesitation, Tantai Lan sighs and feigns leaving, declaring she will sleep in another building if Ming Wai doesn't wish to share. Ming Wai immediately grabs her arm, pleading with her not to go. Lan smiles, asking if it still feels awkward now, to which Ming Wai shyly responds that she's being teased again. After Lan tells her it's time to sleep, Ming Wai lies awake, reflecting on what a wonderful day it was and how it was the happiest of her life so far. She thinks about how the Empress, Qi Nian, didn't blame her for past schemes and continues to treat her like family. Tantai Lan, also awake, silently wonders how a simple trip outside the palace could make Mingwei so happy. Mingwei continues her happy recollections of the unique street food and the vast, open sky. Lan then moves closer, asking if Mingwei would take an opportunity to live outside the palace permanently if one arose. Startled by the question and Lan's proximity, Mingwei can only smell her fragrance as Lan suggests she could marry someone to properly leave the palace. Mingwei immediately refuses, stating she doesn't want that. She clarifies that she only wants to be with the person she likes, someone who makes her happy. Lan smiles warmly and agrees, promising to take her out again in the future. After they wish each other good night, Mingwei thanks her again. Tantai Lan thinks to herself that her curiosity about how a canary would fly has led her to feel both sorry and happy for Mingwei. She gently caresses the sleeping Mingwei's face, admitting to herself that she is happy when she is with her too. Meanwhile, in another part of the palace, the Empress Dowager fumes, complaining that the Emperor was never so bold until the new Empress arrived, and now even Mingwei dares to disrespect her. She slams her cup down and vows that the Empress, Dingdang, will not have the privilege of enjoying her position. The next day, Mingwei arrives at the Empress Dowager's residence and greets her. The Empress Dowager asks for Tantai Lan, and Mingwei explains she left for court early before kneeling to apologize for the previous night's offense, taking all the blame and asking that General Tantai not be punished for her rough manners. After a tense silence, the Empress Dowager dabs at her eyes, asking if Mingwei intends to push her away after she treated her like her own daughter. The Dowager then sighs, stating she has accepted that the Empress's position is secure and that she will no longer interfere in their matters. Later, Tantai Lan tells the Emperor, Qi Nian, about the Empress Dowager's dramatic display. Qi Nian chides her for bowing like a man while dressed as a woman, and Tantai Lan apologizes before changing the subject. She presents a book called Records of Orchid Times that she found in an alley, explaining that it details courtly life with suspicious accuracy and is selling well privately, suggesting a court insider is the author. Qi Nian instructs her to investigate carefully. When Tantai Lan asks to stay for lunch, Qi Nian coldly dismisses her, stating the Empress wants her back early and Tantai Lan would only be in the way, causing Lan to pout in frustration. Back in her residence, the Empress Dowager learns from an attendant that the imperial couple has departed for the traveling palace, and that her maternal uncle's men have already infiltrated it. She smirks, confident they have walked into her trap, and muses on how sad the Emperor will be when he returns from his romantic trip all alone. On the journey, the Empress tells Qi Nian it's her first time leaving the palace. Qi Nian asks if she prefers life inside or out, and she replies she likes both. For the palace has Qi Nian and the world has excitement. When she asks what Qi Nian is reading, she is shown the records of Orchid Times. The Empress looks guilty and quickly advises against reading in a moving carriage, claiming Lan had replaced her previously burnt copy and that the book describes courtly intrigue with unnerving accuracy. Qi Nian warns her that as Empress, any leaks from the rear palace will involve her, prompting the Empress to decide to handle the matter herself. That night, an assassin sabotages a rope bridge by cutting its supports. Elsewhere, the Empress is admiring fireworks with her attendants, Ruan Tao and another servant. She instructs an attendant to halt the sales of Records of Orchid Times, then asks Ruan Tao if the fish stew for the Emperor is ready. They set off to deliver it, with the Empress expressing concern over the Emperor's stomachache from the night before. As they cross the now sabotaged bridge, the Empress notes how worn the ropes look and worries one might snap. At that very moment, a rope breaks, and the bridge gives way, sending the Empress and Ruan Tao screaming as they fall into the water below. The saboteur watches them plunge into the river before quickly departing. In her study, Qi Nian notes the late hour and wonders why the Empress hasn't arrived with her nightly soup. A sudden sense of dread makes her rush out of the room. Underwater, the Empress struggles, wondering how she fell in the water again and fearing for Ruan Tao. She realizes the Empress Dowager must be behind the plot and thinks of Qi Nian's promise to love her, not wanting to die. As she calls Qi Nian's name, a figure dives into the water. It's Qi Nian. The Empress, fading, thinks His Majesty looks as breathtaking as a legendary merfolk. As Qi Nian swims towards her, her outer robes get snagged and torn away, revealing her female form underneath. The Empress's last thought before losing consciousness is whether she just saw His Majesty turn into a woman. Qi Nian brings her to the surface, reassuring her she is safe. The Empress's first thought is for Ruan Tao, but Qi Nian tells her the maid can swim and is safe. As Qi Nian holds her and suggests they get out of the cold water, the Empress notices the water turning red with blood. She panics and tries to call for an imperial physician, but Qi Nian stops her, calling her Yuer, and insisting she must not call for anyone. Just then, attendants arrive and rush to help the imperial couple. Later, the Empress is resting in bed when the imperial physician reports to Qi Nian that she only suffers from shock. An attendant urges the physician to check on the emperor, but Qi Nian dismisses it and sends the attendant to oversee the soup's preparation. Qi Nian then enters the Empress's room alone. She tries to check the Empress for injuries from the rocks in the pond, but the Empress tearfully asks if she was deceived all along, questioning how the emperor could be a girl. Qi Nian admits she shouldn't have deceived her, explaining the complex situation involving the Empress Dowager's desire to install her own niece, Manhwa, as a puppet empress to hide Qi Nian's secret. The Empress realizes the Dowager's attempts on her life were to protect this secret and confronts Qi Nian for treating her like a wife while being a woman. Qi Nian denies her motives were solely to keep her there, admitting she had selfish reasons at first, but has genuinely come to like her. The Empress cries that she gave Qi Nian her heart only to be tricked and made a fool of, lamenting that the person she loved for years broke her heart. Qi Nian kneels, begging for forgiveness and pleading not to be abandoned. The Empress, wiping her tears, states that as long as Qi Nian is emperor, she will be Empress, but coldly tells her to return to her own palace. Heartbroken, Qi Nian leaves after telling her to care for herself and promising to have honeyed sweets sent later. As she walks away, memories of their tender moments flash through her mind. In her bed, the Empress silently pleads not to be abandoned while outside. Qi Nian collapses in the courtyard as an attendant shouts for his majesty in alarm. Tantai Lan watches over the emperor, Qi Nian, who is lying ill in bed, and informs her that she has finally woken up from a fever that lasted all day. She explains that because Nian jumped into a cold lake during her period, she now suffers from a deficiency in Qi and blood, but reassures her that there will be no lasting effects due to her generally good health, adding that she has already acquired a prescription from the imperial physician. Qi Nian weakly calls out Alan's name, thinking to herself that Alan now knows her secret. She internally laments that she had always wanted to tell her but never knew how, fearing that Alan would detest and scorn her for the deception. Later, sitting up, Nian reflects on how she never imagined Alan would discover the truth under such circumstances. Alan, however, gently tells Nian that she knows she didn't choose this life of pretending to be a man and had no choice but to keep it a secret. Nian looks down with a pained expression, thinking that the hurt is still real and that she couldn't continue the hypocrisy of deceiving Alan while avoiding responsibility. Alan calls out her name with concern. Looking up with resolve, Nian declares that she will reap what she has sown. She then instructs Alan to personally investigate the suspicious circumstances surrounding the Empress's fall into the lake. Before Alan leaves, she advises Nian that the two of them have feelings for each other, and it would be a shame for the incident to turn them resentful, reminding her that to regain the Empress's trust, she must first take care of herself. Later, in her own chambers, Nian asks her attendant, Sanbao, if the Empress has taken her medicine, which he confirms. Sanbao expresses his worry, reminding Nian that she fainted outside the Empress's palace and must care for her own health, especially since the Empress hasn't sent anyone to check on her, and the Empress Dowager could find out she jumped into the lake. Nian ignores his pleas and decides to go keep the Empress company, ordering Sanbao not to follow her as she walks out into the night. Arriving outside the Empress's palace, Nian instructs an attendant to bring a soft chair but not to startle the Empress. Inside, the Empress, wrapped in a blanket, tells her own attendant to check on Ruintao. The attendant reports that Ruintao is fine, but then notices Nian outside and asks the Empress what happened between them. The Empress coughs, and the attendant realizes Nian is right there, thinking about how ill Nian is and wondering if she's come seeking sympathy. The attendant asks the Empress if she should invite His Majesty in, given how late it is. The Empress curtly replies that she is tired and going to sleep, prompting the attendant to leave. Nian watches from the doorway with a sorrowful expression, wondering how she can possibly heal the wounds she has inflicted. The Empress lies in bed, her eyes wide open. Several days later, the Empress sits in her chambers, trying to understand her feelings about Qi Nian's deception. She questions whether she likes Qi Nian herself or the person who saved her years ago, and if she would feel the same had her savior been someone else. A memory of Qi Nian's kiss makes her shiver. She tosses and turns, finding the thought both wrong and annoying, torn between anger at the deceit and the possibility that Qi Nian had her own troubles. She then notices Qi Nian standing outside in the cold, and thinks that she should be resting instead of standing there silently. The Empress, whose name is Yuer, instructs her attendant, Quitao, to leave blankets and a warm stove outside for Nian. A visitor, Manhwa, arrives and expresses her relief that Yuer is safe, apologizing for not coming sooner. Manhwa asks if Yuer fought with His Majesty, prompting Yuer to ask if she thinks His Majesty truly likes her. Manhwa insists that His Majesty's devotion is obvious, citing the many times Nian has defied the Empress Dowager and changed her habits for Yuer's sake, culminating in her jumping into a lake to save her. Ruantao takes Yuer's hand, assuring her that His Majesty's devotion couldn't be more evident and that she can confide in her if something is wrong. Yuer decides against it, thinking it would only add more risk for Qi Nian, and dismisses her troubles as passing thoughts. Later that night, Qi Nian sits in her study, distracted as Sanbao tries to hand her account ledgers. She stares outside, wondering what kind of apology the Empress is making by just standing watch without speaking or entering. Sanbao warns her against falling ill again, but Nian tells him not to repeat himself. The door opens and Yuer enters, urging Her Majesty to come inside and rest, as she couldn't forgive herself if Nian fell ill in the harsh wind. Nian shuts the door and they sit in silence. Yuer finally tells Nian to return to her own palace if she has nothing to say, so she won't have to guard the door anymore. Nian quickly insists she does have something to say. She confesses that she never imagined she would fall for Yuer when she began her deception, and that she was always afraid to tell the truth for fear of being hated. Yuer angrily asks if she intended to conceal the truth forever, reminding her of the grave consequences if she were discovered. Taking a deep breath, Yuer asks if Nian disguised herself solely to become emperor and demands to know what happened. Nian explains that the lie began when she was just a baby, when her mother, the Empress Dowager, declared her a son to secure power. She reveals she never wanted to disguise herself or desire the throne, but was forced to live as a puppet under the constant threat that her entire family would be wiped out if her secret was revealed. Yuer is shocked, thinking of the Empress Dowager's audacity and wondering how Nian endured it for 10 years. Nian looks at her with desperate hope, confessing that Yuer is the only thing she has ever truly wanted and begs for forgiveness. Yuer gently touches her face, saying she can see the sincerity in her words, but is still uncertain if it's genuine or just an attempt to smooth things over. She tells Nian she needs more time to understand her own feelings and to see Nian's sincerity for herself. Later, Qi brings Yuer a stack of romance novels about women loving women, which she secretly bought after being instructed to stop the circulation of another book. Shortly after, another attendant announces a gift from His Majesty, a beautiful white cat. Yuer is immediately smitten, noticing its eyes are just like Qi Nian's. Despite Qi worries about the cat's fighting, Yuer playfully tells her to beg her to keep it. She decides to name the new cat Fluffy. Sometime later, Manhwa visits and asks to borrow the book Yuer is reading, blushing profusely. In a cute thought bubble, a chibai Qi Nian cries over Yuer's uncertainty until a chibai Yuer grabs her in a hug, telling her to show her she means it instead of just crying. Yuer, having retrieved the book Manhwa borrowed, blushes as she realizes it's a story about two women, which explains Manhwa's strange behavior. She asks Qi about the popularity of such stories, and Qi explains that love is simply love, regardless of who it's between. Yuer ponders this as she reads a passage in the book that vividly reminds her of a moment with Qi Nian. Meanwhile, Nian asks Sanbao if the Empress liked the cat he delivered, and he assures her she did. A handmaiden asks why Nian didn't deliver it herself, saying her lady would have been delighted. Nian thinks that might have been true before, but not now. She then asks the handmaiden what else her mistress, Yuer, enjoys, and the handmaiden lists her favorite things, including desserts. Nian determinedly tells the handmaiden to teach her how to make them so she can personally prepare them for Yuer. Later, Yuer stands near the bridge where she fell, suspecting sabotage. A flashback shows her slipping on the greased bridge before Qi Nian catches her. Her attendant reassures her that General Tantai is investigating. As they turn to leave, they see Tantai Lan and Manhwa walking together. Yuer sees them and softly calls out to Manhwa, who seems startled to see her. At a pavilion, Yuer asks Manhwa why she was so nervous earlier. Manhwa claims she was just flustered seeing Lan at work. Yuer decides not to press the issue and instead asks about the book she borrowed. Manhwa shyly admits it was good and that some details reminded her of things she and His Majesty have done. Hiding nearby, Tantai Lan overhears Manhwa confess her admiration for the Empress's openness in love and her own wish to tell everyone that she likes Lan. Manhwa thinks about how much she wants to be with Lan, but is terrified of society's judgment and the risk of Lan rejecting her, resolving to hide her feelings to keep her close. Yuer, misinterpreting the conversation, concludes that the deep love in the novels means she must truly like Qi Nian, not for any reason other than the person she likes happens to be her. Manhwa advises her to cherish her fated relationship with His Majesty. Back in her room, a frustrated Yuer throws books around before recalling her own past words, that it wouldn't matter if Qi Nian was a prince or a farmer, she would be with her. She realizes it doesn't matter if Qi Nian is a man or a woman. Picking up Fluffy, she joyfully declares that as long as Qi Nian is who she is, nothing else matters. She decides to go find Nian immediately, but stops herself, her expression hardening as she decides the matter of the deception cannot simply be forgiven so easily. At Qi Nian's traveling palace, the eunuch Sanbao sighs heavily, lamenting that His Majesty has been depressed lately, burying himself in court affairs from dawn till dusk and neglecting his well-being. The Empress's maid, Qi calls out to him, and he turns to greet her, asking if the Empress sent her to fetch the Emperor. Qi glances toward the Emperor's room and lets out a deep sigh of her own, explaining that her lady hasn't been able to eat, can't sleep well, and weeps all day, simply wasting away. She tearfully asks what to do, confused as to why His Majesty remains unmoved despite her efforts. Sanbao is shocked and asks if the imperial physician has seen her, but Qi reveals the Empress is too devastated to even see him. Inside, Emperor Qi Nian sits alone, brooding over the fact that the Empress won't speak to him, forcing him to hear about her suffering from her maid. He concludes she must still be incredibly angry and wonders if he should just do nothing. Meanwhile, in her own chambers, the Empress Yuer fumes that the Emperor still hasn't come to see her, complaining that while she used to have trouble getting rid of him, now he has completely forgotten about her. She dismisses her attendant's report that he is busy with court affairs, recalling bitterly how he only comforted her briefly before giving up last time. Just then, Qi Nian appears behind her, and she turns, sarcastically remarking that she's surprised he has time for her when he's so occupied with state affairs. Qi Nian explains that he was afraid she was still mad and wouldn't want to see him. He steps closer, expressing concern after hearing from Qi that she's been unwell, and asks if her condition has improved. Yuer sighs, asking how he can be so bad at looking after someone when he rules an entire country. She pokes his chest, accusing him of upsetting her to the point of tears and then abandoning her for his work. She continues her grievances, noting that while she gave him her cat personally, he had a servant deliver his in return. Qi Nian gently takes her hands and confesses he thinks of her constantly but stayed away because he feared making her angrier, so he buried himself in work instead. He then softly asks for her forgiveness. As Yuer is about to refuse, she notices the angry red scald marks on his hand. Her anger melts into concern as she takes his hand and asks what happened. After she sternly tells him not to lie, Qi Nian admits he tried to learn how to make her favorite desserts, but finding it difficult, carelessly burned himself by accident. Realizing her previous assumption about the dessert's quality was wrong, Yuer softens and tells him she was just kidding before, confirming that she has forgiven him. However, she quickly adds that she is still angry about his deception. She confesses that despite the hurt and anger, she discovered she still liked him, regardless of whether he was male or female, emperor or princess. Moved, Qi Nian pulls her into a tight hug, passionately insisting that he likes her for real, not for any other reason. Yuer is momentarily stunned by the intensity of the embrace. She pushes back slightly, acknowledging that she feels his affection and returns it, but states that it doesn't erase the pain he caused. She declares she is still mad and challenges him to find a way to make it up to her on his own, without help from Tantai Lan. Qi Nian embraces her again, promising to do anything as long as she'll have him, then cheekily uses puppy dog eyes to ask if he can stay the night, causing Yuer to internally marvel that he's learned all her moves. She agrees to be merciful and let him have half her bed. Later, lying together, Qi Nian confesses how regretful he felt seeing her cry, wishing he hadn't been so controlled as a child and forced to wear a mask. He admits he even had a weak moment where he considered using his power to force her to stay, but ultimately decided he would have let her go if she couldn't forgive him, as her happiness was more important than possessing her. Deeply moved, Yuer thanks him for his love and for staying by her side. The next day, Tantai Lan arrives to give a report to Qi Nian, explaining her investigation revealed that the bridge incident was sabotage, and all evidence points to a female attendant placed in the palace by the Guojiu's men. She presents a signed confession, leaving the next steps to his judgment. Qi Nian orders the attendant detained, but explicitly commands that she remain unharmed and alive. As Tantai Lan is about to leave, Qi Nian asks what trinket she brought for Princess Manhwa this time, then pointedly asks if she likes her that much. Flustered, Tantai Lan dismisses the question but makes one request, that he not hurt the princess. As she walks away, she laments that her request for leave was pointless, and she has become completely hooked on Ming Wai. Suddenly, Ming Wai appears behind her, teasing her about losing her martial edge. Tantai Lan smirks and says she'll prove her skills haven't diminished, promptly sweeping Ming Wai off her feet and leaping into a high tree branch. From their perch, Ming Wai gets a scare from the height, and Tantai Lan playfully asks if her skills aren't good. After calming her down, she presents Ming Wai with a small, cute flower doll. Ming Wai playfully complains about running out of space for gifts before snatching the doll, declaring it hers. Tantai Lan asks if she's not afraid of heights anymore, and Ming Wai admits she is, but not when she's with her. In a flustered moment of bravery, Ming Wai boasts that she's not afraid anymore, but her foot slips. Tantai Lan yells her name as they both tumble from the branch, with Tantai Lan breaking their fall. While Ming Wai is unharmed, Tantai Lan has injured her arm. Later, Qi Nian listens to Tantai Lan's report on the accident. Then, speaking as the Empress, he decrees that Ming Wai isn't blameless and must care for Tantai Lan in her palace during her recovery. Ming Wai enthusiastically agrees to the arrangement, much to Tantai Lan's blushing confusion. That evening, Qi Nian and Yu are walking when he invites her to dinner, but she turns him down, saying he still hasn't properly cheered her up. Qi Nian smiles to himself, thinking he'll have to work harder. Later, Yu is led to a private bedchamber, where she's told all attendants have been dismissed for the night. She enters cautiously and finds Qi Nian, who turns to reveal himself dressed in stunning women's clothing, complete with makeup and hairpins, leaving Yu completely speechless. Yu nervously points out that someone might see him, but Qi Nian assures her they are completely alone. He smiles seductively, asking if it isn't said that beauties look even more radiant under lantern light. Yu's mind races, scolding herself for blushing so intensely. Qi Nian leans in close, teasing her about her red ears and warm face, asking if she's thinking of something indecent. She stammers that she's just not used to seeing him like this, and he pulls her close, asking if his stratagem of the beauty is working. He then places a folded letter in her hand. Yu opens it and her eyes widen in shock. It's a written confession of his true gender and a vow. He tells her that he is entrusting her with his deepest secret. Yu clutches the letter, realizing he has given her his entire heart and trust. The vow states that if he ever mistreats her, she has his permission to reveal his secret to the entire empire, accepting the scorn of all as his rightful punishment. The Empress, blushing deeply while holding a small, tied scroll, tells Qi Nian that she can't do this, as it's a bit too much. She modestly says that she's not that clever and this was all she could think to do. Qi Nian gently takes her hands, reassuring her that she isn't stupid at all, but very smart. Qi Nian explains that the Empress knows she doesn't handle pressure well, so she took a gentler approach, and also knows Qi Nian can't stay mad at her, yet still torments her so diligently. The Empress looks down, insisting she isn't tormenting Qi Nian. She explains that she hurt Qi Nian before and made her sad, and believes one should admit when they've done wrong. Qi Nian then asks if the Empress is willing to forgive her. The Empress immediately embraces Qi Nian tightly, admitting she stopped being mad a long time ago and wonders how she could possibly still be mad at her. Qi Nian explains that it has been years since she wore women's clothing, finding it complicated and difficult to put on. She leans in close, a playful look on her face, and says she's afraid she'll have to trouble the Empress to help her take these clothes off later. The Empress is stunned into silence by the suggestion. Qi Nian then playfully licks her lips, causing the Empress to gasp and cover her own mouth in shock. Qi Nian's outer robe rustles to the floor as she removes it, and the Empress, flustered, asks if she wasn't just flirting a moment ago. Qi Nian embraces her from behind, explaining that she was afraid the Empress would stay sad for too long, so she had to come up with a new distraction. The Empress understands, looking down at their entwined hands and letting out a soft "ah." Qi Nian's long hair swooshes as she moves to face the Empress, who mischievously notes that the way Qi Nian is positioned now is even more suitable for distracting her. The Empress pushes Qi Nian back onto the bed, pointing out that in the past, Qi Nian was always on top, but now that they're both girls, it should be her turn. Qi Nian, lying on her back, asks if this is a punishment. The Empress leans over her and whispers that it's not. She wants to do this because she likes Qi Nian. Lying amongst the flowing silks, Qi Nian softly replies that she likes the Empress too. She tells the Empress, whom she calls Yu, that she is in her hands tonight, but warns her not to say she's tired later. The Empress blushes, admitting that, as Qi Nian knows, she's not terribly clever. She continues, her hand moving down Qi Nian's body, that her movements may not be as nimble as Qi Nian's. She suggests that Her Majesty should guide her properly, then asks why Qi Nian isn't saying anything. Qi Nian suddenly gasps, telling the Empress not to touch her there and that she's going too quickly. The Empress, with a sly look, asks if that was the wrong place and offers her apologies. She then leans in close, sweetly asking if they should start over. Qi Nian lets out a soft "oh my" as she looks at the Empress, whose face is flushed with exertion. She tearfully asks how it became so unbearable that the Empress is crying. The Empress, breathing heavily, retorts that Qi Nian called herself unclever, yet she knew how to do all this by herself before letting out a gasp of pleasure. Qi Nian tells her not to hold back, saying she'd be sad if the Empress hurt herself by biting her lip. The Empress asks for it to be harder, just a bit more, and Qi Nian agrees, promising she will always heed Her Majesty's orders. Qi Nian gently holds the Empress's hand, asking why she's still calling her Your Majesty at a time like this. She says she doesn't like it and asks to be called something else. The Empress wonders what she should call her then, considering that Qi Nian seems too distant. After a moment of thought, the Empress suggests calling her Nianian instead. Qi Nian, overcome with emotion and tears in her eyes, begs the Empress to call her that again. The Empress smiles seductively, her eyes half closed, telling Qi Nian that the night is still young. She promises that if Qi Nian wishes to hear Nianian, she shall continue to call her that. Later in Minghuai's bedchambers, the princess is trying to feed Alan, telling her to have another spoonful. She reminds Alan that the imperial physician said she should eat and rest well to recover quickly. Alan protests, calling Minghuai's name and stating that she only hurt one hand and can still use the other without any problems. Minghuai insists that won't do, reminding Alan that she was injured because of her and that she promised the emperor and empress she would take good care of her. Alan slumps in defeat with a groan of "aw geez." Alan then gets a mischievous glint in her eye, asking what the little Princess Jie will do when she has to bathe, and teasingly asks if Minghuai wants to help her undress and bathe, too. Minghuai freezes, completely flustered by the suggestion. Alan laughs it off, saying it's just a minor wound and nothing to fuss over, as she sustained far more serious injuries on campaigns with her father and brother, to which Minghuai agrees. Minghuai suddenly stands up, surprising Alan, and declares that she will help bathe her. Alan panics, shouting "wow" and frantically trying to backtrack, saying she didn't really mean it and can do it herself or just not take a bath. Minghuai approaches Alan, who is still trying to talk her way out of it, saying seriously that she was just kidding. Minghuai places a hand on Alan's shoulder, insisting that it won't do and that she will personally take care of her without delegating the task to anyone else. Alan realizes she can't get out of this one. As Minghuai helps undress Alan, she notices a scar and asks about it. Alan casually explains that it was from an enemy soldier who slashed at her when she wasn't paying attention during her first battle 3 years ago, but thankfully she dodged in time. She adds with a confident smile that an additional scar is nothing compared to what happened to that guy. She recounts how he was a young general acclaimed as a master on the battlefield, but in the end, she unhorsed him. Minghuai looks at a long scar near Alan's collarbone. Alan dismisses it, saying an enemy soldier slashed her during her first battle 3 years ago, but she managed to dodge just in time. She boasts that the scar is nothing compared to what happened to that guy, a young barbarian general she ended up unhorsing. As Alan finishes her story, Minghuai suddenly leans forward and kisses the scar, startling Alan with a thump. During dinner, the Empress trembles slightly as she reaches for food with her chopsticks. Her chopsticks clatter as she struggles to pick up a piece of food. Qi Nian notices and calmly picks up a morsel with her own chopsticks, holding it out for the Empress and telling her here. The Empress blushes brightly, her eyes wide. She obediently opens her mouth as Qi Nian feeds her, and in this manner she is fed the entire meal. The next morning in bright daylight, the Empress reflects that doing it was far more exhausting than not doing it. She recalls how her hands were trembling by the end, and the bedding was so damp she couldn't sleep. Qi Nian awakens and finds the Empress already up, asking why she's awake so early and noting that her face is all red. The Empress offers to do Qi Nian's makeup, observing that even though she wore women's clothes last night, it's clear she isn't used to applying makeup, especially around the eyebrows and blush. Qi Nian smiles warmly and agrees. After the Empress is finished, she declares it's all done, admiring Qi Nian's willow leaf brows, bright eyes, and pearly white teeth, calling her the picture of beauty. Qi Nian touches her lips and muses that she thinks the rouge is a bit too light. The Empress leans in to look, saying it looks fine to her, but Qi Nian suddenly kisses her. The Empress is momentarily stunned. Qi Nian pulls back with a satisfied smile, declaring it's all better now, leaving the Empress fuming with a red, angry mark on her forehead. The Empress complains that Qi Nian has smudged her makeup, and she'll have to reapply it. Qi Nian teasingly suggests that since she has to redo it anyway, she might as well steal another kiss. The Empress hastily puts a stop to it, saying it will be evening soon if they keep this up, and they haven't even eaten since yesterday. She suggests they go check on Manhwa later, wondering how Elan's wound is. Qi Nian agrees, deciding they should eat first, and they head to the imperial dining hall. That night, as they approach Manhwa's chambers, the Empress starts to ask if she has been taking good care of Elan. Inside, the room is silent as Elan reads a book. Manhwa sits opposite her, staring blankly and looking awkward. The atmosphere is quiet and tense. The Empress peeks in and asks Qi Nian what's going on, sensing that something seems off between the two of them. Elan and Manhwa stand up at the same time, addressing the Emperor and Empress in perfect sync. Elan greets them, saying she's grateful for their concern even at this late hour, and assures them that everything is all right with her. She adds that the princess is thoughtful and attentive in her excellent care. A memory flashes of Manhwa gently blowing on Elan's injured arm, causing Elan to let out a small gasp as they both blush and breathe heavily. Manhwa stammers, saying she remembers being little and falling and scraping her knee, and how Moyin and Mayu would make her feel better by blowing on it to make the pain go away. She explains that this is why she did it, trailing off and saying she means she should take her own bath and turns to leave. Elan suddenly grabs Manhwa's hand, stopping her. She points out that Manhwa was the one who offered to help her bathe and kissed her scar, yet now she's the one running away, having already done everything appropriate and otherwise. Elan calls Manhwa by her full name, asking what she is afraid of since she hasn't said anything. Manhwa internally notes that Elan didn't use the teasing little Princess Jie or the formal princess, but instead said her full name. Elan continues, saying Manhwa always loved to follow her around, watching her with a look she couldn't quite read, but now she understands it far more. She calls Manhwa's name again, looking at her intently. She leans in and asks if Manhwa likes her, causing Manhwa to blush and stammer, "G General." Manhwa quickly retreats, saying the water is getting cold and Elan should hurry up and take her bath, claiming she's inexperienced at serving others and is afraid she might hurt her arm. Elan watches her run away, whispering to herself and asking what Manhwa is afraid of. Manhwa stands outside, thinking that while she is curious, she cares more about what they already have. She resolves that as long as the window paper stays unbroken, she can still treat Elan as just a friend. Inside the bath, Elan reflects that even if they're just friends, some things can't be stopped so easily once they've been put into motion. Back in the present, Elan changes the subject, telling Qi Nian it's fortunate she came by today, as she figured she wouldn't be free tomorrow. She presents Qi Nian with golden thread soft armor, a light but durable item the Tantai family spent years searching for, calling it the best gift she can think of. Manhwa then presents her own gift, an embroidered pouch, explaining that her congratulatory words may be simple, but she hopes Qi Nian attains all her heart's desires and that her bond with the Empress grows ever stronger. Qi Nian smiles and replies that she has already obtained that which her heart desires. The Empress then presents her gift, something she embroidered herself to wish Qi Nian a long life, causing everyone to look on in surprise. The three guests stare at the Empress, who begins to feel guilty. She whispers to Qi Nian, asking why they are giving out gifts when they were just supposed to be visiting. Qi Nian smiles and says, all right, deciding that since Elan is doing fine, she can stay there and she will return to the palace with the Empress. As they leave, Manhwa and Elan wish their majesties congratulations. Elan turns to Manhwa, commenting that she never would have known Manhwa had such a talent for embroidery. She then leans closer, asking if perhaps Manhwa could embroider something for her too. On the palace path, the Empress tells Qi Nian that they came all the way to the traveling palace for her birthday, and she still hasn't gotten her a gift, asking if she's disappointed. Qi Nian admits she is, a little bit. She then smiles warmly, adding that as long as they're together and the Empress is by her side, that's the best birthday gift. Qi Nian playfully pinches the Empress's nose, saying that besides, even if she has nothing this year, there's still next year and the year after that. Either way, the Empress is not getting out of this. Yor imagines her ideal day, which starts with waking up to play with her two cats, telling the kittens to eat up so they can help with her errands when they're older. Next, she pictures herself managing palace affairs, a headband reading, hard at work, tied around her forehead as she diligently reads through scrolls. Her work is interrupted when Qi Nian playfully covers her eyes from behind, asking her to guess who it is. The fantasy ends with the two of them going on a date, where Yor asks what they are having for the evening, and Qi Nian requests some peach blossom pastries. Back in the present at the traveling palace, ministers bow and wish long life and eternal happiness to Her Majesty. Qi Nian, Qi Nian dismisses them and asks her attendant why Yuer hasn't arrived yet. The attendant explains that all the ministers, knowing she would be celebrating her birthday at the traveling palace, have sent their presents there and asks if she would like to see them. Qi Nian, with a soft smile, instructs him to send all the gifts to the Empress and let her choose whichever one she likes. A voice from behind her wonders aloud why she is the one receiving presents on Her Majesty's birthday. It is Yuer, who tells Qi Nian how well she treats her. Qi Nian replies that it's only natural. Yuer twirls in a beautiful new gown, asking Nian if it looks good, explaining that she had it specially made as a rush order for her birthday. Qi Nian teases her, asking why she's the one wearing new clothes on her birthday. Yuer pouts, asking if Qi Nian isn't happy to see her as a beautiful little empress, which makes Qi Nian relent with a smile, stroking her hair affectionately. Hand in hand, they walk up the palace steps, with Qi Nian stating that at the traveling palace, they don't have to observe so many formalities. Yuer tells her to just relax and have a joyful birthday. Later, they enjoy some fishing by a lotus pond. Yuer excitedly exclaims that Her Majesty has a bite as Qi Nian reels in a large fish. They relax on a balcony, petting a white cat while enjoying some wine. Qi Nian remarks that Yuer looks particularly elegant today, adorned with flowers. Yuer then leans in close and whispers, asking Qi Nian to wear a flower tonight so she can have a nice, long look at it. Qi Nian blushes and agrees, but warns Yuer not to complain about being tired later on. As evening falls, Yuer stretches and yawns, saying she's exhausted after playing all day and suggests they go back. Qi Nian agrees, acknowledging that Yuer worked hard to accompany her, though she privately thinks Yuer had just as much fun. Walking through the palace grounds at night, Qi Nian reflects that while it was her birthday, it felt like any other day, yet she muses that any day spent with Yuer never feels ordinary. She stops, noticing the darkness, and asks why the lamps aren't lit at this hour. Yuer smiles slyly and asks how Qi Nian will ever manage, being so kind-hearted, but claiming she didn't prepare a gift. A firework suddenly shoots into the sky, exploding in a brilliant display. Yuer explains that she isn't kind-hearted towards everyone. As more fireworks light up the night, Yuer tells Nian that she knows she's had a difficult life and received little love, and that it must have been hard for her all these years. She embraces Qi Nian, promising that she needn't be afraid or sad anymore, as she will be there to love her from now on. They share a deep and passionate kiss under the fireworks. The following day, as their procession travels through a forest, an official remarks to Yuer that the fireworks for Her Majesty's birthday went on for so long he couldn't sleep. Yuer, looking pleased, replies that she has been over the moon ever since her birthday. Qi Nian, overhearing this, proudly tells the official that those were all planned by Yuer. Another official approaches, informing Her Majesty that the relay station ahead has made preparations for their arrival, and asks if he should proceed with the plans. Qi Nian agrees, adding that the Empress planned the fireworks and spent a lot of time preparing for it. She continues to boast to the officials that it was all the Empress's doing, and that the entire empire knows how deeply devoted they are to each other, causing Yuer to blush. Manhwa, feeling unwell, steps out of her carriage. Qi Nian, looking concerned, wonders why she suddenly got out and if she's feeling unwell. She then decides she will have the officials record these events when she returns to the palace. Yuer whispers to Qi Nian, asking why she doesn't just keep these memories to herself. Qi Nian hugs her tightly, whispering back that she will not, because she always wants to let the entire empire know how good she is. Their mood turns serious as Yuer remarks they won't have such carefree days once they return to the palace. She voices her suspicion that their opponent might try something, considering they are bringing the palace maid who pushed her into the water and are stopping at a relay station halfway. Qi Nian reassures her, saying she has a plan and not to fear. Yuer tries to lighten the mood, suggesting they talk about the fireworks or next year's birthday gift, but Qi Nian tells her to stop bringing it up. Nearby, Alan cries out in pain as she dismounts her horse. Manhwa rushes to her side, asking if the general is feeling unwell. Alan clutches her arm, claiming she might have aggravated her injury and that the pain is incredible. She suggests that since they are not far from the relay station, she might sit in the carriage with Manhwa for a while. Manhwa, deep in thought, feels a pang of guilt, believing Alan was ultimately hurt because of her. She tells Alan that the carriage is cramped and will be uncomfortable, but offers her a small container of aromatic revitalizing powder, explaining that just sniffing it will make her feel much better. As Alan looks at the powder, Manhwa calls out to the general, asking why she doesn't ride with her for the rest of the journey since her injury hasn't fully healed. Alan, however, rejects the offer, saying there is no need. She expresses her unhappiness, pointing out that Ming-Wai won't even call her by name and that sharing a carriage would make the trip uncomfortable for them both. Ming-Wai softly begins to say her name, Ailan, but trails off. Ailan then confronts her directly, saying that Ming-Wai has been avoiding her all this time. She recounts how Ming-Wai moved to a side hall as soon as her arm healed and brushed her off with excuses when asked to paint for her, not to mention the times she personally fed her and helped her bathe. She asks if Ming-Wai kissed her wound out of pity, causing a flustered Ming-Wai to cover Ailan's mouth, whispering for her to stop talking in broad daylight with so many people around. Ailan agrees not to bring it up if Ming-Wai will just stop avoiding her. Ming-Wai denies avoiding her, but Ailan insists she is, leading to a back-and-forth argument. Qi Nian and Yuer watch from a distance, with Qi Nian wondering why they are arguing. Yuer smiles, telling her to let them be as it's better than the hide-and-seek game they've been playing. Qi Nian sees through her, realizing her Empress is truly something, not only intelligent but also skilled at understanding people's minds. Yuer just smiles mischievously in response. Later that night at the stable woodshed, 2 guards are suddenly knocked unconscious with 2 thuds. The door creaks open, and a masked assassin steps inside where the captured palace maid, Yuan Ying, is tied up. The assassin tells her to blame herself for bungling the job as he raises his sword to kill her. However, Yuan Ying's eyes snap open, and she deftly dodges, breaking her bonds and disarming him in a swift movement, revealing she was never a helpless captive. She grabs the assassin's mask, pulling it off and declaring herself to be his worst nightmare. Just then, the doors open to reveal Qi Nian, Yuer, and their entourage. Yuan Ying kneels, announcing that the brigand has been caught. Qi Nian looks down at the captured man, remarking that she had thought they had given up on silencing witnesses, but it appears they were not as patient as she imagined. The assassin, seeing he is trapped, bites down hard. He attempts to crush a poison capsule hidden in his tooth, but Yuan Ying forces his jaw open, telling him he's not getting off that easily. Qi Nian calmly orders Yuan Ying to take him for interrogation, find a way to make him talk, and ensure none of them die before they return to the palace. Later, on a walkway overlooking the palace, Yuer remarks that it's a shame she missed seeing the assassin being disguised, and wishes Qi Nian would remind her if there's a next time, adding how amazing Yuan Ying was. Qi Nian gently admonishes her for wishing for another dangerous incident. Yuer asks how she will deal with these people upon their return. Qi Nian replies that she will do exactly as the law prescribes. She gazes at the moon, explaining that her mother, the Empress Dowager, used a deception for the ages to place her, a girl disguised as a boy, on the throne as a puppet emperor. She tolerated her mother's faction seizing farmland and selling official positions so she could be more decisive when the time came, but they even dared to try and replace her empress. Yuer leans against her, reminding Qi Nian that she nearly drowned and was nearly assassinated, and asks how she will make it up to her. Leaning in close, Yuer whispers her demands. When they return, she wants Qi Nian to play her maid to bathe her, dry her feet, and massage her with aromatic creams, attending to every inch of her inside and out. Qi Nian calls her audaciousness heaven-reaching, but Yuer cheekily replies that it only needs to reach her. Changing the subject, Qi Nian asks why Yuer was hoping Ailan would take her to the roof. Yuer feigns ignorance, suggesting Her Majesty wants to show everyone how skilled she is in martial arts. Qi Nian pulls her into an embrace, telling her she knows what she meant. She states that even if it's Ailan, she doesn't want her embracing Yuer. She then suggests that if Yuer truly became her maid, she'd never require another to attend to her. Qi Nian then admits that she does owe her mother a debt for giving her life, but when she returns, she will sever her communications with the court ministers. Yuer points out that as the Empress Dowager, filial piety comes first, and Qi Nian can't just drag her to the execution grounds. She then realizes Qi Nian has been unhappy this whole trip, but was trying hard to make her happy, asking if she was afraid she'd be angry at her. She tells Qi Nian that in the end, she was the one who was hurt and that she is also their target. Yuer gently touches Qi Nian's face, saying she's the one who's been hurt all along. She tells her that she has heard her tears, remembering a time when she heard Qi Nian wailing uncontrollably and loudly without stop. The emperor holds a young woman close, remarking that she is clearly the smartest one and always sees right through them, asking why anyone would claim she lacks wisdom. The woman, her face buried in the emperor's shoulder, explains that it's not that she's smart, but rather that she just knows them too well. Standing together on a palace balcony under the night sky, she elaborates that if the Empress Dowager truly cared about the emperor, she wouldn't try to harm them, and if she cared about her, she wouldn't disregard her wishes and scheme to make her the empress. The emperor reflects that all the Empress Dowager truly cared about was power, while the young woman sadly adds that she has become but an instrument for the Empress Dowager to secure that power. The emperor comforts her, saying there is nothing shameful about being ambitious, even from a humble background, and in fact, they admire her for it. Taking her hands, the emperor reveals they've sent all the palace guards elsewhere. The young woman asks if this means the emperor will let her fly as they promised, and with a gentle smile, the emperor agrees, telling her let's go. The emperor thinks to themselves that they know she doesn't actually want to fly, but is just trying to cheer them up, feeling that she is the best. They tell her to hold on tightly, and she stiffens in their arms as they prepare to leap. After a short flight, they land back on the wooden walkway with a laugh, the emperor admitting they'd better not embarrass themselves with their pathetic martial arts skills. Cupping the young woman's face, the emperor says it's nice to hear her laughing like this. They tenderly tell her that while she couldn't choose her parents or her past, she has them now, promising to treat her well and never leave her. As they soar through the night sky amid swirling petals, she asks them to promise never to leave. The scene shifts to the Empress Dowager, who furiously slams her hand on a table, shouting about another failure. She rants about giving her brother so much silver only for him to hire bumbling fools. Her subordinate, Chen Fu, kneels before her, explaining that they hadn't known the security around His Majesty was so strong, and they walked right into a trap while trying to silence a palace servant. Chen Fu warns that the imperial procession's return is imminent, and if the emperor discovers the Guoju's involvement, it will be disastrous. The Empress Dowager, with a grim expression, states that her younger brother was just following her orders, and that they must find a way to counter this. She orders Chen Fu to tell her brother to lay low for now. In a fit of rage, she screams at him to eliminate anyone who needs to be silenced and destroy all evidence, warning that she won't be able to protect him otherwise. After a flash of violence where Chen Fu is splattered with blood, he nervously agrees and backs away. Alone, the Empress Dowager fumes, wondering how getting rid of Dingdang became so complicated. She clutches her head in frustration and demands to know where the emperor is now. A servant informs her that the imperial procession returned an hour ago and should be at the Meridian Gate. The Empress Dowager quickly concocts a plan, instructing the servant to inform the emperor she has suddenly fallen ill and that the Guoju has left for Hanshan Temple to pray for her recovery. As she finishes speaking, the emperor appears before her, flanked by the young woman and another lady, and coolly observes that for someone who is ill, she looks quite healthy and able to manage the Guoju's affairs, pointedly asking what she is truly ill with. The Empress Dowager stares in shock as the emperor stands before her with the two women, their plan already discovered.